From Triple Colossal Studios right to your headphones, this is Mike Andrula.
What's happening, guys? It's your man, Michael Andrula. What would you do if the doctors told you had a brain tumor and they couldn't operate? The only thing we can do is recommend you get your life in order. This happened to Bryan Bishop from the Adam Carolla Show. He was told he had a brain tumor after getting married, and it was a time in his life where things were going well. So what would you do, guys? How would you react? The book is called Shrinkage, and I love the title. It's Manhood, Marriage, and a Tumor That Tried to Kill Me. It's hysterical. Great to talk to you. I'm really happy you decided to come on. I'm sure you're extremely busy, so I'm not going to waste a single second of your time.
Oh yeah, don't worry about it, man. It's, thanks for having me on.
I wish we had talked earlier. This way I could have just quickly realigned your chakras, and I'm joking, can't tell, but I was wondering right off the bat, did anybody come up to you with some crazy solutions to the tumor problem?
Meaning what do you mean by that?
Like Eastern medicine, energy healing, nature, like that, supplements?
Yeah. A good friend of mine, a friend of mine, his mom does, his stepmom does like alternative healing stuff. And back when I was diagnosed, he was like, hey, you should see her and talk to her, and because she's into all this stuff. And I was like, all right, well, you know, I'm certainly open-minded, and I'll try anything. So yeah, she's like, you know, she does everything from guided meditation to hypnotherapy to Reiki healing and all that stuff. So I was down to sort of experiment with anything.
Yeah. How are you feeling
at the moment?
Yeah.
Good. I'm a little tired, but I mean, there's nothing to do with the tumor. It's just, you know, early morning. But otherwise, you know, feeling good. Can't complain too much. I'm very lucky to be in a position where I'm on a therapy routine that I tolerate really well, and yeah, just very lucky.
I really didn't know you were such a good writer, but
you should have known.
Well, how was I supposed to know?
Touche.
But no, you did write some blogs and the Film Vault and the reviews of movies. Do you write that stuff down, or do you improv it?
No, I definitely write it down. I do a lot of not scripting, but you know, I definitely have thoughts that I form before I do my movie reviews. For example, I'll form a thought in my head, or a theory, or an opinion, or whatever, and sort of sketch it out. And I hopefully have the in a perfect world, I sort of see myself as having the ability to write well, but also be one of those hopefully people that can roll with the punches and improvise well also. I mean, that's sort of, I don't think Adam Carolla, for example, my boss on the Adam Carolla Show, he doesn't suffer fools very well, and certainly people who don't have improvisational abilities at the very least.
Yeah, I would imagine so. But and I'm going to recommend, probably most people who listen to this are going to get the audio version, and I appreciate that you read it. I'm really glad you decided not to have somebody else read it. It just doesn't feel the same.
Well, thanks, man. You talk about the audiobook. It really wasn't my decision, believe it or not. The publisher, the way it works, or at least the way it was explained to me, is the publisher sort of has the right to resell the audiobook rights, and they sold them to an audiobook publisher. Mm-hmm. And they made the decision to have me read it, and of course I said yes. I always wanted to, and it was probably better because it's one thing if it's a dramatic novel or a young adult novel or something like that, but when it's a memoir about someone getting cancer, it'd be weird if it was someone else saying, and then I was diagnosed with this and that, and it's ever so inauthentic. You know what I mean? I think it adds something to have the person who went through it read it if it's that kind of recovery memoir.
Yeah, I don't think. The reason why I'm obsessed with the whole idea of this book, it's a situation I put myself in all the time. I listen to Steve Jobs lecture, and he's saying, if you look at yourself in the mirror every single day, and you just got to play a mental experiment that if you didn't have that many days left, are you happy? And the last lecture, I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yeah.
So you were actually in that situation. So to share the way you felt, the process, and now what you've learned. Have you distilled down any decisions where you're like, I'm just not going to tolerate this, or I'm going to every day make sure I add to this world?
Interesting. I don't know if I've made that decision so consciously. I will say that one thing that is much more important to me than it was is sort of giving back to the community. You know, when I was going through the worst of my treatment and recovery and everything and my sickness, so many people were so incredibly good to me, you know, both financially and just in terms of support and you know, resources and stuff, and both on a charitable level through like organizations and also just on a personal level. And it was never super important to me, charity, before. I'll be honest. It was just something I didn't really think about, just because, you know, I was a guy in my 20s who, I guess that's just not something that was on my radar. But now that I've been through it and I've seen both sides, I realize how important it is, and it's something that I'm a lot more aware of and a lot more eager to get involved in. I've been the chairman of the LA Brain Tumor Walk the last 2 years. I'm doing it again this year, so 3 years in a row. I've been the chairman of the LA Brain Tumor Walk for the National Brain Tumor Society, and I'm just, you know, very happy to get involved and bring awareness and get, you know, raise some money and make it a good day for everyone who comes out and all the people who are getting treated and all the people who are supporting. And you know, if it's something that I can give back in some way and use my very small measure of celebrity or notoriety, whatever you want to call it, I'm happy to do it, and I feel like it's my responsibility.
And the next walk is coming up, or is it?
Yeah, it's at the end of August. You can go to you can just Google LA Brain Tumor Walk, or you can go to bryanbishop.com and donate or join my team or get out and walk, whatever people feel motivated to do.
Yeah, one of the most powerful. Well, the book, it's fantastic, and for people that listen to this, they invest in themselves, and we just had Bill Courtney on, who from Undefeated Against the Grain, super motivational book. I think you guys had him on.
Yeah.
And, Hunter Mott's Straight A Conspiracy, and the people buy books because not only do they want knowledge, but they want to support the idea that you're going to produce another book. Are we going to get another book out of you?
Well, that's so funny. I've had this conversation. I feel like I've had this conversation like 6 times over the last 3 days, and that's not a bad thing. Obviously, it's just funny that it keeps coming up. I can only speak for my experience writing this book, and I think other people have maybe a different experience because maybe they put a different level of effort into their projects. But I realize how this is coming off, so I don't mean it to sound like that. What I'm trying to say is, writing this book for me was such a Sisyphean effort of pushing this boulder up this hill in an infinite loop, like it never ends. And the fact that if I had known how much effort it would have been before I started, I might not have done it, honestly. Like, I'm glad I didn't know when I started, because I just sort of, you know, blindly went into it thinking, oh, I'll just write this book and it'll be great. And I'm glad I did it, and it was cathartic, but it was such a remarkable effort that I almost can't picture doing it again. I'm sure I will someday, but it's not something it's not on the top of my list.
You had a baby, though. This is a knowledge baby, and now it's going to grow, and it's going to cross-pollinate with other people's thoughts and ideas. So I know it must be tremendous. I probably blocked a year of your life out, but and honestly, the writing of it was the easiest part by far. It was everything after it. It was just getting on people's radar and metaphorically knocking on doors and sending emails and saying, hey, is this something you want to, talk to me about on your podcast or your show or whatever, or would you write a blurb, or can you read this, or, it's just, and maybe all that'll be easier now that, the first book is out and it did well and there's a track record. Maybe it'll be easier the second time around, but I would just need some time before I even considered doing this again. And I liked it. That's the thing, is I'm not like, oh, what a horrible experience. I enjoyed it, and I'm glad I did it. That's the scary part. It's like, wow, imagine it was something I didn't like doing. Yeah. Well, the book's got so many great stories. The way you tell the shower scene, I'll just leave it at that. And when Adam, I've heard it on the show before, but when he is choosing the car colors, and
right.
he finds out. What a dramatic story. The most fascinating thing was the decision where you're like, listen, I'm gonna buy the bulk razors. Could you elaborate a little bit on why was that the moment?
Yeah, so it happened. The story comes at the end of the book, but it happened early in the in my journey, which was so I've just been diagnosed with cancer. I've just been given literally, been told I have 6 months to a year to live my life. I'm 30 years old. I'm engaged, and here we are considering what to do with treatment. And in the meantime, we got to go to Costco and stock up on just stuff. It's just that time. So we're buying toilet paper and, all sorts of crap. And I need razor blades. I need, razor blades for shaving. And so I walked to the personal care aisle of Costco, and of course, they have a 36 or a 42 pack or some gigantic pack of razor blades. And those things last forever because they're 3 blades and they're just made out of titanium or whatever it is. And so I'm looking at them. I'm holding my hand. I've literally been diagnosed within a couple of days, and I'm looking at 6 months left to live, and I'm holding this thing, and it's expensive, obviously. And I'm like, the thought crept into my mind. I'm like, oh Christ, I'm going to be dead before I can use all these. And I sort of paused because it was really the first time I'd really considered the fact that, I could be dead before I finish this thing of whatever, this razor blades or this, whatever this thing is. I will not have enough time to do this thing in my life. And granted, it was a stupid thing, but it was a thing. And so I'm holding this thing in my hands, and I'm like, I should save my money. It's going to be expensive, with cancer treatment and everything. Or I should just go to the drugstore and get a smaller pack, a little 4-pack or whatever. And I realized that in my mind, it made sense to me that doing so would have been admitting defeat. It would have been just saying it was giving up in a way. That first little crack in the dam, that lets all the water through. And I was like, I'm gonna buy the 30-pack. I'm gonna buy the Chubb pack of razors, and if I die, so be it. But I don't think I'm going to. And I bought it, and it was sort of it was a fork in the road. You know what I mean? Where I just sort of chose to go down the path of greater resistance and fight and meet this thing head on.
Yeah, you always kind of think maybe it would be some moment where like the clouds part and it's going to be like Jesus is going to come down, but no, it's the razor blades that's going to give you the motivation, and that was really powerful to me. One thing I felt I'm reading a lot of things, I'm listening to shows. Do you feel guilty?
Well, have you said the name of the book yet? I don't know if
Shrinkage. This is okay. This is in the internet age. People listening to this, Bryan, are going to be gigantic fans of you already, and we'll do a tight intro. I just didn't want to.
I got you. Okay,
waste
you'll do a
second.
Little. No, that makes sense. You were just saying the book, and I'm like, man, I hope people know what he's talking about.
Shrinkage. How could you not? What a great. I mean, it's so ironic and so funny.
Thanks, man.
Was that you? Who thought of that?
The title, actually, credit goes to my editor, Rob. The working title was the title of my wife's blog, which was An Inconvenient Tumor, which was my idea.
That's a great name too.
Well, thank you. But when they sold the book, my agent came back to me. He's like, good news and bad news. Good news, they want the book. Bad news, they want to change the title. I'm like, I don't give a shit. They can change the title all they want. And it's their book. They're the customer at this point. And we didn't even have to bat around that many titles. Rob read the book, and my editor, and he got back to me. He's like, "Hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about Shrinkage?" And I was like, I took a second, and I was like, that's pretty good.
Yeah,
because I'd heard so many horror stories about battling with editors over stupid ideas and stuff, and I was prepared for this drag out battle over the title, and I was like, that's actually really good. It's clever. It's sort of a double entendre. It's kind of playful. It's funny. It's provocative. I like it. I think it's great, and we sort of settled on it very quickly. And that's the two sides of a great idea. Number one, you wish you had thought of it, and number two, everyone can sort of agree. It was right away. I was like, all right, Shrinkage. We'll think of a good subtitle, and I thought of 4 or 5 different ones, and we landed on Manhood, Marriage, and the Tumor that tried to kill me, and that was a wrap.
Then the other essential part, especially there's a lot of younger audience here, so that the cover of the book is done perfectly.
Oh, thanks.
Did the publisher create that, or did you guys?
That was my idea based on sort of how I'd done. I have an app in the App Store, and it's the sound effects that I use for the show, and it's designed very similarly. I mean, I did it a couple years prior, and I was like, oh well, I do this. I have this design, this idea. It's sort of how my app looks. I sent it to them, like, oh yeah, that looks about right. And of course, they their art department did a fantastic job with it, and really made it look really fantastic. They took a basic idea and really fleshed it out. And honestly, and it's funny, they fleshed it out in a simple way. They didn't really have to do a lot of bells and whistles to it. It's very minimalist, but I think very effective.
Yeah, your sound drops, Bryan. I guess the key on sound drops, and we've tried to have people do sound drops on a live performance. It can destroy the show, or it can make the show fantastic.
Oh, thanks. I mean, I assume you're saying it's the latter.
Yeah, because when you yes, of course. Did you model it after anybody? Did you study like Fred from Howard Stern show, or did you have anybody that was a go-to? I mean, it's such a unusual job.
Yeah, I grew up in the Bay Area in San Francisco, and the station that I listened to, Live 105, had Howard Stern in the morning, and it had Loveline at night. And so I grew up, with, at least in high school age, I grew up in a very good time for talk radio. Both of those shows are notable for having excellent drops. Obviously Fred Norris was a very well-known godfather of the drops, if you will.
Yes.
And I learned a lot from listening to him. In my personal opinion, Anderson from Loveline was even better. I always found I laughed out loud at his drops and always found them to be some of the best parts of the show, and really learned the timing and the pacing and where they fit from listening to him.
Yeah, podcasters, listeners love inside jokes, and in essence, you're summing up 4 or 5 minute conversations in one drop, packing in so much funny.
Yeah, so. It's a combination of. You're absolutely right. You're in on the joke. You know the context. You know where it comes from. You know what it means to people. That little half-second drop can mean a lot more because it has a history or because it's been played in certain circumstances. And it's also it's separating it from I don't know, a fart or a burp sound. I'm using that as an example, but that's I think it's self-explanatory.
Were there any drops where either Teresa or Allison or Adam were like, please don't play that anymore? Did they ever tell you stop?
I don't think that ever came up. I don't think that was ever a thing. Adam, to his credit, has given me a lot of autonomy over the drops, especially in the early days when I first took over for the drop position on the show. I was very green and very new to the whole idea, and probably admittedly overdid it a little bit early on. But he, to his credit, he sort of let me work it out and develop sort of philosophy on my own, and I think I've gotten decent at it.
No, you're perfect. The podcast, definitely the best podcast out there by far. I don't think podcasting would have gotten to where it was if Adam didn't go over. When Howard left New York, the vacuum, they gave us David Lee Roth, which I like David Lee Roth, but I don't know why we didn't make that connection from Adam in New York. It would have been, but it turned out for the best because podcasting exploded.
Totally.
Your family, you describe in one chapter where your parents, and I just imagine these situations, but did you really have to be at the brink of death to have your wife and your parents, put everything in the past and just get along?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for everyone, obviously, but you're talking about the chapter towards the end of the book where I describe, these, family problems that I was having, and not even problems, just stress and difficulties brought on by my condition, and the fact that, my parents, their son was dying of a brain tumor, and my wife, her husband, was dying of a brain tumor, and brings out the worst in people sometimes. This great stress, and to no one's fault. It just is what it is. I left it to the end of the book, for many reasons. Number one, because want to write about it. I was uncomfortable, and I didn't feel great about writing it. But it was also something that happened, and it was hopefully it's something that can help people who are going through a similar situation realize that, hey, I'm not alone, and this happens, and hopefully people come out of it the other side better for it. I think that my family and my wife in particular are in a better place, certainly, than they were when the stress of the situation was really getting to everyone. And it's not a pleasant situation, but it happened, and it definitely put off writing it, for obvious reasons.
Well, we appreciate it's in there. It's real. And one fantastic thing about the book, it's got tumor tips. So if you do get cancer, I mean, Jimmy Schubert was on a show and he said that comedy's just how to make light of, serious issues. And the tumor tips are quite, they do just that. I love the little idea of you just popping in tumor tips.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, I pepper the book with a series of tumor tips, which are helpful for anyone who maybe is diagnosed with cancer, or a loved one is, if you're looking for ways to help. But I think they're also, for the most part, helpful to anyone who's going through anything serious. Maybe it's an injury, or maybe it's just some serious thing that you need some tips on. Hey, here's how to sort of I don't want to say manage it, but here's a few tips on how to make your life easier.
Hell yeah. So I feel like you were a lot of things were making you do you feel guilt at all for no reason at all, Bryan? I know Adam paints you in a different light, where he's like, you're putting your dog on a pillow or something like that, and but when you're listening to the chapter of you needing to go to the bathroom and you don't want to really disturb anybody, or it seems like that's why would you feel that?
Yeah, I'm glad you picked up on that, because I think a lot of my persona, I don't know a better way to put it, but sort of the way I'm portrayed maybe on the sometimes on the show is not entirely accurate. Now I play it up to a certain extent, with the sniffing and the self-satisfied smugness and all that stuff, because it's funny and it's sort of a character trait, and I do possess that. Don't get me wrong, but I definitely think of myself as a pretty humble person when it comes down to it. And you're right, the chapter where I just didn't want to be a burden to people, and I didn't want to bother people unnecessarily. When looking back, I had every right to burden people, because I was suffering pretty badly from brain cancer. But I didn't want to unnecessarily put people out. I just felt that wasn't right, and it wasn't my place, and I felt bad about it.
Even going to Italy, I felt like you kind of justified it. I was like, no, go to Italy. You should stay in Italy for 6 months. I think that'll help your recovery time. Yeah,
it's I fully am aware that some people just feel differently than you do, just feel the opposite, and I don't think there's anything I could do or say that would convince them otherwise, and so that's their opinion, and they're sticking with it. I sort of made my case in the book as best I could. This is how I feel. I understand maybe it's controversial, or maybe it's, it rubs you the wrong way, but until you're in that position, you're just never going to know. And God, I hope you're never in that position. But you're right. I guess there is some survivor guilt over why me? Why am I the lucky one who responded to this treatment so well, and who ended up with the right doctors, and who was lucky enough to survive and to live to tell the story? There's plenty of good people, plenty of better people than me who unfortunately didn't make it. And is that fair? Absolutely not. It sucks. It's not fair, and I would never want to have to explain that to their families, for example. Like, this guy's alive and doing great and writing a book and is on the New York Times bestseller list, and your husband, for example, didn't make it, and that sucks. And I would feel pissed off if that was me and my family. And I completely 100% sympathize and empathize, and that's just something I have to live with for the rest of my life. Is sort of a why me question.
You shouldn't, but it's probably tough to reverse. We were on this earth for such a short amount of time, Bryan, and a great podcast is Larry Miller's, and Larry Miller was also a modern day philosopher by Danny LaBelle, and he discussed when he was in a coma and when he came out of it, he had a lot of revelations about life. Do you feel like you have any revelations about what's going to happen after we're gone?
Interesting. Larry, by the way, is a great guy. He's one of the genuinely good dudes out there, and I'm lucky to know him. Interesting. I'm like I said at the very beginning of our chat, I'm a pretty open-minded guy. I'm not. You probably got from the book that I don't like to rule a lot of things out, a lot of possibilities, whether they're metaphysical or spiritual or emotional or medicinal. I'm open to a lot of things until I'm convinced that it's not right. I'm open to the fact that it could be right, and whether it's what happens when we die, or whether it's the fact that is there a God, or is there life after death, I'm open to all of it. I could be convinced. It's not so far-fetched. The fact that, it rubs me the wrong way when people are so convinced that there is no life after death, or there is no God, or there is no such thing as ghosts or spirits. I mean, listen, I doubt it, but if someone was to prove to me tomorrow that it is possible, then I'm like, okay, I'm on board. I'm not going to say no. It's unbelievable to me that someone could be 100% convinced in either direction. Sure. It's like, really, 100%? You're not open to the possibility that it's a yes or a no? That to me is strange. So I'm eager and willing to find out what's in store for us.
So I just want to play a little word association here.
Okay.
Tell me what you think. So, well, it's not really a word association, but more accusations. JFK, Fukushima, New World Order, iPhones, very fragile.
Okay.
This is your last chapter in the book. Obviously, it's not translating well, but don't you think Adam's got a point here?
Okay, now explain it. You're talking about the audiobook, because there was a bonus chapter in the audiobook where I sort of wrap up a long-standing argument between Adam and I, where he claims that the iPhone was intentionally made to fall and break, thus selling more iPhones for Apple.
And all the points are valid, but don't you think they're like, well, after 6 months we'll have this bad boy break, they'll have to get the new one.
That what you just said makes sense, just like any conspiracy theory makes sense. Otherwise it wouldn't no one would listen to it. Like, even 9/11 being an inside job, it's ridiculous, but at least there are pillars to which you can attach ideas. Now, the iPhone falling and breaking and selling mathematically makes more sense. I mean, makes sense because, sure, you drop a phone, you got to buy a second one. Therefore, everyone who buys the phone buys two. That mathematically makes sense, but practically it doesn't make any sense, because take anything in your life. Take this coffee mug that I'm holding right now. If it starts slipping out of my hand on a regular basis, am I going to go back to the same store and be like, oh, got to get the same coffee mug, the same piece of crap that keeps falling out of my hand? No. How many times are you going to drop something and break it before you say to yourself, I should probably switch products to something that doesn't slip and break?
Yeah. I just love the fact you're getting so heated about it. You wrote a chapter. So either you're in the Illuminati.
That chapter, by the way, was a late scratch from the book. That was my editor, Rob, being like, I think the chapter on the iPhone just sort of takes a bit of a detour. It's a bit of a divergence. And I agreed, and I was like, it's just really important to me, but I understand what you're saying. And I'm like, how about a bonus chapter for the audiobook? And he's like, perfect.
Bonus chapters and tangents on the audiobook are why you get both books.
Yeah.
It's so fun to look at the comparison. But
I designed the book so you would drop it and break it and have to buy 2 books.
Now that, Bryan, that could be the next book. You should just go completely about iPhones. What are you recommending for? I know we have the Film Vault, and I love the reviews. I know you love movies, and I do consider your recommendations to be very, very accurate. Do you have anything coming up for this summer?
If you have not seen Edge of Tomorrow, I highly recommend it. It is the best summer movie I've seen this year, at least in terms of the big blockbusters and all that stuff. It is really fantastic, and not getting nearly enough attention for being a really, really good movie. So Edge of Tomorrow so far is the runaway winner. Other good movies, the X-Men movie is pretty good. I don't know, Captain America, I guess, is pretty good. But drop everything and see Edge of Tomorrow. That is a fun movie and well done.
What about the Road Hard? Are you going to be able to review that?
I'm not sure what that is. No, I'm looking forward to it, man. I just, for the fact there's going to be a ton of people I know in it, and you know, I love the Hammer. I own the Hammer on DVD. I'm a fan of Mr. Carolla's, obviously.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see Road Hard and all that stuff. I think it's going to be pretty cool.
And just want to wrap up and really say that your wife must be an incredible person.
Oh yeah. Oh, she's the. As I'll tell anyone, she's the star of the book.
Yeah, it's pretty much, except for the time she drugged you, which is a great animation. If nobody's seen, well, people have seen that. I don't know who did the animation for you, but that guy's. We need to unleash his forces on the whole book.
His name's James, and he animated a scene from my book for me, which is really, really funny and really well done. And I don't know, maybe you can put it on your website or something.
Absolutely.
A link to it. It's on YouTube, but it's pretty funny.
All right. Well, I don't want to take any more time. I want you to get out there and enjoy your day.
Thank you, friend.
Your family, thank you. Well, tell your wife thank you for keeping you around, keeping you solid, and keep on just killing it for us. We really appreciate it.
I definitely will. Thanks for having me on, Michael.
All right, Bryan.
All right, take it easy.
Bye-bye.